The Queen is expected to be seated alone at the funeral of her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, due to strict COVID guidelines. Buckingham Palace says plans have been modified to take pandemic measures into account, but the subdued service will respect the Duke's wishes.
Joining us live is UK correspondent Ian Woods. Ian, rehearsals have taken place as only 30 guests will be celebrating what was a remarkable life.
Vastly different from the funeral plans which Prince Philip had a hand in drawing up over many years. There would normally have been probably around about 800 mourners in normal times, but these still aren't normal times in the UK or indeed for most of the world. So they will be following strict COVID guidelines in terms of the number of people who are designated as mourners. Now, you will see an awful lot more than the designated 30 when you watch funeral coverage later today. Or tomorrow, and when that happens you will see that there are a band of the Grenadier Guards will be leading a procession. There will be mourners walking behind the coffin. It'll be a lined route by members of the military in the 8-minute procession from the private chapel within the walls of Windsor Castle to St George's Chapel, where the funeral service will be held. But once inside, those will be just 30 mourners. The Queen, obviously, her children and grandchildren and only close friends of Prince Philip have been invited to keep those numbers down. And even, for example, though there will be a choir, it'll be a much reduced choir. 4 members of the choir will be performing, as well as various other people, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, who will be conducting the funeral service. So vastly different from what we would have expected, as I say, in normal times. But there will be a minute's silence observed at 3 o'clock local time when that funeral gets underway.
And it's just what Prince Philip wanted. He quoted no fuss, but minimal pomp and ceremony. Floral tributes have been laid outside Windsor Castle due to the pandemic. And yes, as you mentioned, the royals have asked people to watch from home.
That's right. I mean, everything will be happening away from public view, so they've suggested that people do not come to Windsor tomorrow to line the route or anything like that, because they won't see anything. But mind you, the public have been ignoring the royal requests all this week as regards flowers being laid. There have been flowers left here at Windsor Castle, but also at Buckingham Palace and other royal residences. And what the palace officials have been doing is gathering up those flowers and taking them elsewhere, so that there is no gathering of people to look at those flowers. But Prince Edward, his wife, the Countess of Wessex, and their 2 teenage children were among those who looked at the flowers which had been gathered up and left on the lawn just outside St George's Chapel, where the funeral service will be held tomorrow. Earlier in the week, we saw Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall also looking at flowers which had been gathered up and left at Marlborough House in central London, the headquarters of the Commonwealth. So they are aware of how the public have been responding to the death of Prince Philip and joining the royal family in mourning. But it has to be said that not everyone has been terribly sympathetic about the amount of coverage Prince Philip's death has been getting. More than 100,000 people have complained to the BBC about the vast amount of royal coverage and tributes to Prince Philip's life. So not everyone is satisfied, but much of Britain will come to a halt tomorrow during the funeral service. Sporting fixtures have been postponed. Even flights have been delayed going into Heathrow Airport nearby, because the roar of planes would be disrupting to the funeral service.
I don't know what people expect. Pardon me, he was a prince and the husband of the Queen and nearly lived 100 years. It's quite extraordinary. But the Queen will sit by herself due to COVID?
That's right, and all of the mourners will be masked, following the guidelines that are in place still in the United Kingdom for funerals. They didn't want to deviate from the rules in any way, and it means that people have to sit in their normal bubbles, as it were. So if you have a spouse and children, you can sit together, but if you are alone, and now the Queen, of course, is alone as a widow, she is supposed to sit slightly apart from other people. But she will have the support of her family before and after the service, and her children and grandchildren will be walking behind the coffin as it is paraded on this procession. A lot of comment here about the fact that Princes William and Harry will not be walking side by side, which you would expect brothers to do, indeed, as they did at the funeral of their mother, Princess Diana. Instead, Peter Phillips, the son of Princess Anne, is designated to walk between them. Now, that seems to be an unnecessary distraction from the funeral, allowing that to happen. And a lot of people wondering why that would be the case, but it does seem to indicate that that rift between the brothers is still ongoing, with Prince Harry having moved first to Canada and then to the United States. And of course, his wife Meghan will not be at this funeral service because she is heavily pregnant and on doctor's orders will stay in California.
Yeah, there's definitely been a bit of a dust-up between the brothers. Thanks, Ian. We'll catch you a little later on this morning.
And for complete live coverage of Prince Philip's funeral service, you can tune into Sky News tonight from 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or our replay, which will be 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.